Joining us on the line right now is Eli Lake from the Daily Beast, a national security correspondent there, and an all-around good guy to get up early in the morning and talk with us here on Mornings on the Mall. Good morning to you, Eli.
Good morning to you guys. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Well, it's always a pleasure to have you. Look, and it's an especially good day to have you since we're going to have the president come out tomorrow. We're not actually. I heard last night that they weren't sure whether this is going to be a daytime address or a formal nighttime address. That issue was still up in the air. At least that's the way it was last night. But he's going to speak about what the United States should do about ISIS. And we've gone from him describing ISIS as the JV team. To him recently saying that he didn't have a strategy to deal with ISIS, to now saying we're going to have to deal with it, and here's my plan. What do you expect to happen as the president addresses the nation in some form on this matter?
Well, I mean, this is a very important moment for President Obama because I think that there's a legitimate criticism out there that oftentimes when there is a foreign policy crisis, he confuses giving a speech for actually doing something and having a strategy. Well, what we do know is that the president has been reluctant to get back into Iraq, to get back into the Middle East. He's made it very clear that he will not send combat boots on the ground, even though there are more than 1,000 American special operations forces and other types that are in Iraq right now. And that despite giving the very clear impression that the United States would be bombing ISIS positions in Syria as part of a large program larger policy or war, really, to destroy ISIS, the president has waffled in the last month on that very point about exactly, what the aim was of this overall, we're now at war with ISIS, what's the goal of the war? Is it to destroy ISIS? So in that respect, I think that, that's the most important thing. I mean, we've now heard in the last week, we went from contain to degrade and destroy. So I think that, to hear the very clear war aim, and the president has said also that it's going to take a while. And, there have been, I think, around 140 airstrikes in Iraq, since in the last month since the president announced actions in Iraq against ISIS there. So I think he's going to summarize kind of what's been going on and what he's been doing. He's going to talk about this international coalition that he's been putting together. Clearly, it's good news for him that there's a new Iraqi government. And then finally, when we get to the Syria part, I think he'll try to explain. I'd like to hear what exactly is going to be new. He said that now there's going to be training elements of a moderate Syrian opposition. He's been talking about training elements of a Syrian opposition for 2 years now. So how's that new? I think he's going to talk. Congress needs to pass his $500 million plan for doing that in Syria. They haven't done that yet. He put that out there in June. It'll be interesting to sort of see what else he's bringing to the table here.
Eli, you were so well put when you said sometimes the president mistakes giving a speech with actually doing something. And I guess I want to follow up on that with you've watched this administration operate now in these situations. And my hunch, what I suspect is happening tomorrow night is that this is really more PR and damage control over that devastating statement at his press briefing last week when he said that he doesn't have a strategy on ISIS. Is this really meant to just sort of reverse that talking point and hopefully instill a little bit of confidence in the allies that eventually he will have to try to stitch together? Because international leaders right now must be freaking out about the president's lack of leadership.
Well, I would say, listen, it's the beginning of, the school year. Congress is back in session. Summer's over. This is the time when you have to sort of lay out, your major policy addresses and so forth. Clearly, the war in ISIS is, right at the very top of the list. And that's why I think he's going to be delivering this speech to sort of emphasize that. And, we really are at war. This summer, it's significant. This summer, he authorized airstrikes in Iraq. He got very much re-engaged in the one country he did not want to re-engage in. And he promised to end the war in. He's now, very much fighting a war in Iraq right now. So in that respect, if you take a little bit of a longer view, I think, that's where he's coming from. But the big question is Syria. It's pretty clear that this thing called the Free Syrian Army as an institution is not up to snuff from the perspective of the U.S. intelligence community to fully partner with. So they're going to try to figure out the elements of that Free Syrian Army that are moderate enough, that won't take any of our equipment and gear and give it to ISIS or the Al-Nusra Front or other extremists. That's a knotty problem, but the president really, really has been very reluctant here. And remember, he told Tom Friedman a month ago, it was a pipe dream to think that we could have supported the Free Syrian Army. Now he's saying a big part of his strategy is to support
the Free
moderate
Syrian Army
opposition, as if this is day one.
Yeah.
I mean,
all right, let me
for 3 years.
Specifically about Syria, we had the chairman of the Joint Chiefs came out and said he can't imagine a way to solve the ISIS problem without going into Syria to degrade their command and control. He was then, he sort of had to walk that back because it seemed like he was way out ahead of where the president was, way out ahead of where the Secretary of Defense was. What was going on there and in those internal debates where we had the folks who run the military who were saying one thing and the president of the United States then coming out and said, we don't have a strategy?
Well, I mean, that's a very astute point. I mean, listen, you had Vice President Biden saying, when they behead an American like that, you have to chase them to the gates of hell. That didn't sound like Obama's policy. I think what you have now, and I put Hagel in this category too, you have the National Security Cabinet, unlike last year when the red line was crossed in August about chemical weapons from the Assad side. I think you have the National Security Cabinet, including Kerry and Hagel, firmly behind the position that it's time to take the fight to ISIS. The holdout was Obama. I think Obama now is going to give a speech that says we are at war with ISIS, and now he's finally going to get behind that position. And the president, I think, in the end, has kind of came closer to Dempsey's position, as opposed to, and I think Dempsey articulated that position before the president was ready to own it.
Hey,
That's what I think happened.
Eli, we only got about 30 seconds here, but I got to ask you keep mentioning ISIS and how critical ISIS is going to be. Well, the disaster of our ISIS strategy from about a year and a half ago very much involved Russia and Vladimir Putin. What is he going to have to say about what the president says about Syria, and will it matter?
Right now, Vladimir Putin has his entire focus on Ukraine and the rest of Eastern Europe. Russia may think it's a world power. They're not. They are focused on, they can't believe, they have to pinch themselves. They can't believe how lucky they are. They no longer have to be content with just Crimea. Now they're going to have other parts of Eastern Ukraine. So that's where I think Putin's focus is. The president's focus is going to be in the Middle East.
And very, very quickly, with just a second left, 9/11 anniversary coming up. Are you hearing any intelligence chatter? What are you picking up?
Well, I mean, I think the significance of the ISIS speech on the eve of 9/11 speaks for itself, and you always have to worry about the significance of the anniversary of that date. I mean, Al-Qaeda likes to put an exclamation point on that date, sadly.
Thank you, Eli.
Thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it.